When you were a baby, you were hardly aware of your ego. You existed, but you didn't really know that you existed. You couldn't refer to failure, this is fear of failure, you couldn't refer to failure as you failing. It was just a failed attempt. You didn't take it personally. You didn't even know you were a person. You didn't really even know what you were. It didn't matter that you failed to walk and talk 100 times before you were effective. You never stopped and thought about it. I'll read that again. It didn't matter that you failed to walk and talk 100, probably 1,000 times before you were effective. You never stopped to think about it. It didn't even matter that your failures were the source of your family's laughter and pleasure. How about that? In fact, you actually enjoyed the attention sometimes. And when you figured out how to get that attention, sometimes you even did it on purpose. You were pretty innocent. You were close to your soul then. And although you had the same ego as you have today, your awareness of it was underdeveloped. You were like an animal in that way. Animals have very little ego awareness or self-consciousness and feel less embarrassment, etc. than us. That's why you see those funny videos of animals chasing man-made riddles like a ball on a piece of string. They're not egotistical enough to care about how silly they look, and why the little old rich lady can dress her poodle in a hideous red tartan dog jacket and the poodle carries on as if nothing in the world has ever changed. They're not aware of themselves. They're not embarrassed. But as we get older, we start to notice ourselves more. The mirror doesn't exist from 0 to 14 years old for most humans. But after teenage years, it hits. Suddenly, you notice yourself. And others notice you. And the self-conscious, hypersensitive side of the ego is born. I've arrived. You suddenly exist to the world, and that's scary. Now we have a situation. If you have confidence instilled in you from somewhere, you still don't care how many times you fall or fail in life. You still think like your little baby self in regards to self-consciousness. You do have an ego, but refer to it, but just don't care when people laugh innocently at your mishaps, or even when people tell you to stop because you're no good at it. It's like water of a duck's back, if you have confidence. Sometimes, that inner confidence expresses itself in a slightly twisted way as arrogance or narcissism. But whatever the case may be, at least you will get through without fear of failure for the time being. You'll have to deal with the arrogance later. Or you become so engrossed in yourself that the fear of failure begins to stifle your steps. This is the problem. You freeze whenever a desire challenges you to behave in a way that may lead to failed attempts, i.e. the baby trying to walk becomes the adult trying to do salsa dancing and fears looking like they have 2 left feet. You freeze simply because others might get to know what you're doing and laugh at you, or consider you inadequate in some way. But remember, as your baby self, you've clearly proved that you can learn things despite failing, incessantly, whilst being the source of other people's happiness and comedy. Remember that. As a child, as a baby, you have done things over and over again whilst being laughed at constantly, but you never gave up. You ended up learning to walk and talk and everything and eat whilst being laughed at, whilst being looked at, whilst being prodded and poked and failing over and over again. Now imagine yourself back as that baby self again. Imagine that you cared that much. Imagine that you were conscious of yourself, that when an adult laughed at your babbling speech, or even copied it back to you, you thought, right, well then I shan't be doing that again. If you're going to mock me, baby, imagine. Or when your sibling pushed you off the sofa, you were gripping onto, trying to walk, and you thought, that was me. I'm only 8 months old. How dare you? I'm not walking whilst he's around. Imagine how slow your progress would be. But you didn't do that, did you? You cried a bit when your bottom hit the floor, and adults laughed while they picked you up. But you tried again, and you tried again, and you tried again. The mentality of an adult who lives with a fear of failure is that they stop themselves from growing because of what they think failure means both to themselves and others. Right? The mentality of an adult who lives with the fear of failure is one that stops themselves from growing because of what they think failure means to themselves and to others. They think they should be sheltered from laughter and criticism when they try. The reality is the world they are about to grow up in is not like that. The reality is that it is only their ego that cares about their failed attempts. Others actually pay very little passing interest in these moments. This is really important. We think that when we fail, it stays in people's consciousness forever, and they always think about that when they think of us. But it's so fleeting. To us, it's a mountain. To them, it's just, ha ha ha, did I it wrong or whatever, and they move on. And the soul inside you doesn't care at all that you failed. Doesn't care. Not interested. Look at the baby. It's close to its soul, and it has its objectives, and it will do everything to achieve them. Milk, food, sleep, change meat, nappy, play, walk, talk, whatever, baby always wins. It is the ego that develops the crushing pain, dejection, rejection, shyness, self-abuse, and ultimate self-destruction that hides the successful experience of life. What I'm saying to you is go back to fearlessness. Look at it all very simply again. Just like when you first learned to walk. Remember this. It's so important that you remember this example. When you first learned to walk, how hard you tried and how much you would still be on the floor crawling around had you given up because you couldn't do it the first time. Let people laugh. Let them talk. Let them even try and stop you. But if your desire is wholesome, legal, safe, and fairly sane, then absolutely go for it. So I'm actually saying let people talk, let them laugh, let them try and stop you, but if your desire is wholesome, safe, and sane, then absolutely go for it. If you continue with a fear of failure in any area of your life, remember that little baby you once were, and remember how brave you used to be. There's a quote here that I've written. If success is at the top of a ladder, failures are the rungs that will get you there. There's an expression which is people are afraid to succeed. People are afraid to actually achieve. Have you ever heard that before? Not even afraid of failure, you're afraid of succeeding. That's a whole other thing. Because it means that you're going to succeed and you don't think you're going to keep it. You think you're going to F it all up again. So fear of failure even happens after success. You think, I shouldn't get this because I'm going to F it up again. But what I want you to do before we continue is think about any area of your life right now, just for a few moments, where you think you have a fear of failure that's stopping you making several attempts. And I want to ask you what those things are. I gave an example like salsa dancing, right? You want to learn to do salsa, but you're afraid to make a complete jackass of yourself, and you're up there. Or you want to sing, or you want to do something, and you think no, because everyone will laugh at me. Or you're afraid of this because everyone's going to laugh at me because I'm going to make an idiot of myself. Whatever. Have a think for a moment, and I'll ask you what you think is a fear of failure that you have that you can share with us. So we can just learn a little bit about how this works. Vicky.
I lived in France for a couple of years, and I was so afraid that people were going to laugh at me.
You're going where?
French properly.
In
I lived
France?
in France for a couple of years. And to the point where I lived there for 2 years and I still don't speak it fluently because I was always afraid that people were going to laugh at me making mistakes.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. That's what it is, right? So if you imagine yourself back at baby consciousness, right? It wouldn't care. It probably would entertain the fact that people are laughing at it and actually enjoy that. And one day, no, they won't laugh at me forever, but let me keep them happy and make some friends while they're laughing at me. That's how a baby thinks. It goes, oh, you're laughing, you're falling. Oh. Listen to me talk funny. And then, one day I'm going to talk like this guy. So it's, where else? Where else is there? By the way, if I set myself alight, please tell me. I said that yesterday, but I'm getting closer and closer to this candle. Go on. Fear of failures, any of them?
Yeah, I recently gave up smoking. One of the biggest things was for most people, they don't give up smoking because there's this big fear of failure.
Oh, right, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
They fear they're going to fail giving up.
Yeah.
That's a whole mental quandary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really weird one, but yeah, people fear the failure that they won't be able to give up.
I
Fear
believe,
yourself, kind of thing.
and also if you tell people that you're giving up, and then I think one of the best things you can do for failure, best exercise for failure is tell it. You know, they say don't tell anyone. I say tell everyone. Tell everybody.
Exactly what I
Yeah. If you think you're gonna slightly fail at something, tell everyone you're going to do it. Tell everyone you're going to do it, and create positive expectation on yourself. It's the best way. Create pressure. Put pressure on yourself. Put expectation on yourself. And if you don't do it for yourself, you do it for them.